you want some water or something?
I have,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay.
I'm already.
All these people, why were they meeting with the cops?
I have no idea.
You saving secrets? We all look different these days. And I'm getting old, and someone else is coming, and we're both getting old. So we can.
All right, let's get started. Where's Councilor Mestis? Good evening, everybody. See if this is on. Testing. Good evening, councilors. Hello. Mike. Mike. Matt.
So did you like my photo?
Matt. Yolanda's gone.
The heart on the tour.
Matt. Good evening, everybody. They got it. Welcome to City Hall. We'd like to call this meeting to order and ask that we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, the salute to the flag, and the invocation. If Councilor Dominguez, Councilor Harris, and Councilor Mastis can lead us accordingly.
Please remain standing and bow your heads. We typically have an invocation before each meeting. I just want to ask all of you to pray to your higher being, recognizing the diversity of religions in our community, and pray that that this governing body will make the best decisions that would benefit our citizens, and that we treat each other with respect, and also take a moment to think about how our country came together on the 4th of July. For one day, this country, this state, this city was united, and if we can carry that spirit of unity throughout the entire year, I think our country, our state, and our city would be better off. So before we have a moment of silence, I'd like to open the floor to any members of the governing body that wish to recognize. Councilor Villarreal.
Thank you. I'd like to honor the life of a friend, Seferino Sef Ortiz, who passed away recently. He was only 42 years old. He's from Nambe, and we went to college together. He was always a really kind and loving person and very respectful, and I wanted to send my love to his family in Nambe, his parents, David and Selena Ortiz, and all their friends and family, to give him strength and peace during this difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Dominguez.
A couple of things real quick. I'd just like to ask for prayers for the family of Johnny Baca and a loss of one of his family members. And also for the loss of one of the original founders or one of the original members of the One Santa Fe group, Mr. Dave Chakowski, that we keep. He passed away a couple of weeks ago, I believe, and we keep him and his family, his wife Nancy, in our thoughts and our prayers. Thank you.
Anyone else that wish to make any special intentions? I guess we always bring up members of our community that have passed on, but recently I've seen many obituaries, and even though we don't know these people personally, they were members of our community, and I think that every time we lose a member of our community, it's a loss to all of us. So please keep all those that have recently passed in your prayers. And so with that, I'd like to have a moment of silence for those people. Thank you so much. Please be seated.
Thank you, Councilor. Moving on to item 5, roll call. Present. Here.
Councilor Lindell. Councilor Maestas.
Present.
Councilor Rivera.
Here.
Councilor Trujillo.
He is excused.
Thank you. And Councilor Villarreal.
Present.
Thank you. You do have a quorum present, Mayor.
Moving on to item 6, approval of the agenda is presented. Are there any changes at this time?
Mayor, there are no changes from staff at this time.
Okay, what's the wishes of the council?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Moving on to item 7, approval of the consent calendar. Are there any items to be removed? Okay, what's the wishes of the council? No. Almost. I'm sorry, what are the wishes of the council?
So close.
Okay, Councilor Lindell.
Thank you, Mayor. Item B. Thank you.
B as in boy.
Yep.
Councilor Ives.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to pose a few questions on item C, item G, and item K. Thank you.
Councilor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. If we could discuss item A, I'd appreciate it.
Any others at this time? Okay, what is the pleasure of the council
Move to
regarding?
approve as amended.
Second. Roll call.
Yes, Councilor Dominguez.
Yes.
Councilor Harris.
Yes.
Councilor Ives.
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Maestas,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
and Mayor Gonzalez.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion has been approved.
Moving on to item 8, approval of the minutes. It's a pleasure of the council. Councilor Ives.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, I could not be at the last meeting of the governing body, and one of the items that I was hoping to potentially hear us reconsider or take another look at was the matter relating to case number 2017-02 and case number 2017-03, which were the safe lock storage out on Airport Road, one a general plan amendment, one an airport road rezoning. As I was not here and did not vote on that, I have no capacity to propose a motion for reconsideration, but I would indicate to the governing body that it would be my intent to ask to be placed on the next council agenda a motion to rescind the action. I'd like to make sure that Councilor Trujillo, of course, is here as well because he did vote on that. So really just to let folks know that my intent and a motion to rescind can be brought basically at any time on a particular matter. So as far as I know, noticing that would give an opportunity to sort of tee that back up for potential reconsideration, and the first vote would be on whether or not to rescind the action previously taken by the council, and then potentially, if that was approved, then act on those items once again at that meeting. So
Okay,
really
so
wanted
if
to
I-
broadcast my intention in that regard.
So if I understand correctly, then you're going to request that an item be placed on the agenda for the next city council meeting that would rescind the previous decision regarding that item.
Yes, and I would just turn to the city attorney and make sure I'm correct in my understanding of the procedures there.
Mayor, councilors, Councilor Ives, the question I need to look at in this case is because it involves an ordinance and a resolution, it might require a different period of newspaper notice, so it might happen at the meeting after that. I would also say, but yes, it's quite proper to give you notice of your intent, and it will go on a subsequent meeting, whatever the timing requires. And I believe Councilor Maestas also had and intends to introduce a motion to rescind, and I had suggested to him that communications from the governing body would be the appropriate time to do it, but this seems like a good time.
If you don't mind, when he's
Councilor
done,
Ives.
I'd like to.
I'm sorry,
Councilor Dominguez, did you want to comment on?
That's fine. I think that, everyone can do whatever it is that they feel like they need to do or want to do. But in terms of approval of the minutes, which is the item that we're on, are you asking that we do something specific with that section of the minutes?
No. Again, the two types of motions that are frequently brought in that type of circumstance are a motion to reconsider or a motion to rescind. A motion to reconsider has to be brought by somebody who was acting in the majority on the motion for which reconsideration is requested. And insofar as I was not there and did not vote, I could not be that person. So I just wanted to make procedurally sure at this point in time.
Okay. And that would have taken place prior to the minutes being adopted on the reconsideration. But what we'll do, Councilor Ives, you can provide the direction to the city manager requesting that the item be placed on the upcoming agenda or whenever it is legally prudent to do so, permissible, and we can address the issues of rescinding previous votes under matters of the governing body.
I just want to make sure, since we're on the minutes, that by taking action on these minutes, we're not going to, I guess, not give ourselves the opportunity to go in that direction by approving these minutes.
That's correct.
Mayor, councilors, Councilor Dominguez, that is correct. In a motion to reconsider, it would need to be done before the minutes were approved or the findings of fact were approved. In fact, there are also no findings of fact this week. Because there's a 30-day deadline on the appeals from that, I may have to put them on the next agenda, and it may have to be postponed, but we can figure out the dynamics of this particular issue.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Messes?
I too would like to declare my intent to make a motion to rescind regarding actions taken on ranked choice voting at the next meeting, so if it could be properly noticed and on the agenda. And I'd also request that there be a public hearing held in conjunction with that agenda item.
Okay, so I'm going to allow you to say that again for a second time under matters from the governing body, but this is just for purposes of the minutes at this point.
Okay.
That we'll go ahead and take that direction if that's okay.
All right.
Great. All right, is there a motion to approve the minutes? Or has there already been one?
Move to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, we're going to move on to presentations, and I would just ask the council to allow me a bit of point of personal privilege in issuing a proclamation. This proclamation is being issued to honor Kara Connors Esquivel, individual who served our community in so many ways, but most particularly to this council as a member of our immigration task force. So I'd like to read the proclamation into the record, and I believe Kara's family is here. I'd like to present the proclamation once it's read. Whereas Kara Connors Esquivel was born on July 17th, 1968, to a bicultural family in Chicago, Illinois. Her father was Irish descent, and her mother was from Alcambaro, Guanajuato. And whereas fighting for freedom was in Kara's blood, her abuelo rode with the revolutionary Gavia of Pancho Villa, whose photo adored the wall of Kara's classroom. Whereas Kara grew up amongst powerful matriarchs, her mother and aunts valued bilingual education and higher education. Kara carried that torch. And whereas Kara graduated from Mother Macaulay High School, received her BA in Community Development from the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, and earned her MA in Education from the University of New Mexico, and she attended the Bread Loaf School of English, Middlebury College. And whereas Kara's idealism and love for Latin America took her to rural Costa Rica, where she was a Peace Corps volunteer, she chose to continue her pursuit of social justice as a teacher of English, Spanish, and Spanish language arts. Her teaching career took her to Jefferson Middle School in Albuquerque, Bernalillo High School, and 2 schools in Santa Fe, the Academy for Technology and Classics, and Monte del Sol Charter School. And whereas in 2001, when Kara joined the staff of Monte del Sol Charter School, she became the lifeblood of the school as a fierce advocate for children and families, particularly students of color, those who came from Mexico and other countries, and those who lived in poverty. And whereas Kara taught Spanish as a second language, Native American literature, and Spanish language arts from 2001. She was beloved by her colleagues, students, and families. Her family nights for Spanish-speaking parents were well attended, lively evenings, which families were invited as partners in their children's education. Whereas Kara was a devout member of the City of Santa Fe's Immigration Committee from 2011 through 2016. Whereas Kara was a loving mother, wife, daughter, sister, and friend to many, Kara will be missed by her family, colleagues, and students. Now, therefore, I, Javier M. Gonzalez, Mayor of the City of Santa Fe, do hereby proclaim Friday, July 17th, which is Kara's birthday, 2017, as Kara Connors Esquivel Day. And I just want to say, and I know there are probably members of council who would like to offer some remarks, how grateful I am to the family for sharing Kara, for supporting her efforts while she served on our immigration committee. I know when we, 3 years ago, confronted the issue of bullying in our schools, she led the efforts to make sure that we were on point and that we made sure that no child ever had to fear walking onto the schools. And so for that, I know that there are hundreds of children that are growing up in an environment that is far better because of her efforts. So want to say thank you for that and tell you that your family is in our prayers every day.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to say a few words in honor of Kara, who was my vecina, and she was also my compañera de baile in NIA class. And she was also a comadre, although we didn't always get to hang out all the time, like a lot of you got to see her daily in your work. And the way I think of Kara is she was a very strong young warrior, una guerrera. She seriously was, and she loved fiercely. And I think all of us could only strive to live our lives that way on a regular basis. And I always think of it as her light still burning continuously for all of us, so that all of us can each find our path to love, to equity, and to justice in this world and in our community. And I'm honored to have known her. And I did have a quote from her that for some reason it disappeared. I can't find it anymore. But it was a quote about how she learned from her dad about fighting for the rights of others, for people that don't always get to stand up for themselves, that don't always have a space to be recognized, and that she will continuously do that. She would always feel like that was the right thing to do, because what other way is there to live? And I feel like that's a good, probably just a focus of how all of us can treat each other with respect, but fighting fiercely for what we believe in, but in a respectful way. And I think Kara really exemplified that. And I'm happy that I'm able to be close to the family, although I guess we're always really busy because they're my neighbors. But just know I'm there for you. If you need anything, you can always find me here. So thank you so much, and I love you all.
Santa Fe is a far better, loving place because of her presence. And every day we will strive to honor her commitments to our community and make sure that
Mayor?
we respect the contributions. Councilor Rivera.
Yeah, I'd just like to say a few things about her as well, because though I knew her in a little different capacity, not as a passionate advocate for human rights, but as a mom and as a spouse to a good friend of mine, Dave. So I didn't even realize that they lived in my district until I started campaigning the first time when I was running for office. And she brought me in and welcomed me, and at first it took a while, but I realized that Diego and Anna were part of my junior ref program that I was running at AYSO. So you know, she was very aware of it, and very loving woman, and very passionate about her kids and about her husband. So definitely someone that we'll miss. And you know, same as what Councilor Villarreal said, if you ever need anything or we can do anything, let us know, please. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, members of the council. Thank you all very much. Thanks. Appreciate it. Okay, let's move on to onto the consent calendar. Item A, Councilor Harris, you pulled, but I know that Councilor Ives wanted to offer a quick motion.
And I apologize for not doing this when we were considering the consent agenda. I actually meant to pull this and postpone it probably into September, as I had feedback from at least one county commissioner asking for more conversation before trying to bring this matter forward, and so I had meant to pull it and postpone it to at least the first meeting in September in order that those discussions might occur. So as a preliminary matter, I would move to amend the consent agenda to postpone item 10A to the first meeting of the governing body in September.
Second.
Okay. Can we do a voice vote on that, Yolanda?
Yes, because we're not
Just to
actually
postpone.
amending the motion on the consent calendar. The motion will be just to postpone this item
Correct.
to September 13th. Okay?
That'll work.
All in
So
favor
moved.
signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Moving on to item B, Councilor Lindell.
Thought we had item C.
Oh, was it? You didn't want item B pulled? Did anyone request item B?
Yeah, I had B.
B, sorry. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Carter.
Good evening.
I just had a few questions on this. I'm a little concerned about this report that we have. It doesn't really seem to, in the resolution, we had 7 questions that were to be addressed, and I don't see this report as addressing those questions. And I think that it was important to do that because that's what the resolution called for. And I don't see that being done. I mean, there's 7 questions. The first one being who will assume responsibility for land patent with BLM, determining if facility grounds programs management agreement is needed. I mean, we have these very, very specific things that we ask for that are not provided in this report. I don't know who wrote this report. I don't think it was you. Who did write this report?
I'm going to turn it over to Pilar, who did write the report with our input.
Counselor, this is just it's an update to where we are in the process. This is not the final product by any means. And so this is more like we're trying to be informative that the group that's been tasked by the county and the city to kind of come up with this authority concept is working, and this is to let you know where we are right now. By no means is this a final product. We still have a lot of work to do.
Okay, I would say that part of the work to do is to answer the questions of the resolution. That's very specifically tasked to do. The second thing is, who made the membership of this committee?
From what I understand, it was staff at the city and the county that the county and city managers' offices felt were appropriate to be involved in the process.
What do you understand, Mr. Carter?
Council, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, that's my understanding, is that we were asked to put together a group for developing possibly the soccer authority that would include city representation, county representation, as well as soccer league memberships.
Okay, I'm still not clear who put the group together. I can move on, but I think that it's important in terms of transparency to know how these committees come together. On page 2 of the report, under Business Plan Economic Development, know more about how the focus group was assembled and how were members of the focus group chosen? It's on page 2 of the report, page 3 of the packet.
So Council, Mayor Pro Tem, everything so that when we move forward, these are the avenues that we could approach.
Okay, I guess, so that's what the focus group is?
Yes.
Who's part of that group?
Madam Chair, Chris Heyer, Nick Smith, Cesar Barnell, Jennifer Romero, and Matthew Brown.
I think it's important for us to know these things, whether it's an appendix to this, how these people were chosen, who they are, what their expertise is. I mean, we're talking about a very, very potentially sizable project here. And I don't think that we should just be putting it together behind closed doors and not giving us full information about this.
Councilors, if you like, we can bring this back at another point in time so that you have your answers to your questions.
Well, I would like that because it's just informational, and to move it through, I mean, I just think that it's incomplete in addressing any part of the resolution, and I think that it's also really very important in this report. I mean, this is a resolution, and I think it's extremely important to identify. At the very end, it says, on the last page of the resolution, I think that the paragraph that begins on line 9 is extremely important for this group to pay attention to, that we're talking about operating Soccer Valley and a regional soccer authority results in the need for or use of additional funds from the general fund of the city of Santa Fe, an offset to the budget of Parks and Rec Department in an equal amount shall be brought forward. I mean, that has the potential, should this move forward, to be a sizable budgetary consideration to the departments of Parks and Recreation. We're dealing with large numbers in this project, and I think that to be very careful about these reports and give as much information as possible is what really is needed. If you would like more time to do this and bring it back, that would be great. I asked Mr. Brown from Economic Development about this, and he told me that there was a plan about bringing a tournament and then a second phase. None of that is in this report, and I don't know why.
Those are separate issues.
They're separate issues? I don't think that's how Mr. Brown understands it. So I think everybody needs to sit down at the table together and make sure that we're all talking about the same issues. So it would be my inclination that we need to postpone acceptance of this report and see it come back.
I guess a couple of things. This is for information only.
Right.
So I don't know if we need to even take any action on it. I want to thank you, Pilar, for the work that you have done. And Councilor Lindell is correct. It's a sizable task for staff. I know that in the information that was provided, that there are a number of next steps that Pilar has identified that, you know, are part of the process that she's articulated. But what I want to know from a staff perspective, Brian, is whether or not we have the capacity and the resources to provide, I guess, the public, for lack of a better word, the resources they need to get through this, because it's a lot. I think it's something that we should look at and something that the city should potentially invest in, but we can't not provide them with the resources that they need to make it so that it does become successful. And right now, as you know, there are a lot of things happening in parks and recreation. And I just want to know from you whether or not we have the capacity and the resources to be able to get done what needs to be done.
Mayor, Councilor Dominguez, thanks for the question. Honestly, I've not been involved in the loop of this at all. And when I read this report in preparing for council this evening, I too reached out to Matt Brown, who was new in the shop, but there was economic development undertones throughout here, so I just want to make sure that he was aware of it. He too spoke to me about sounds like a very similar conversation as to what I had with him about, a phased in process of starting with one tournament, growing to multiple tournaments, and growing to see, get a sense of there is a believed need, and it's just trying to evaluate the existing need within our existing capacity of fields. In creating an authority, I read the next steps as one of the next steps is that they would be meeting with both myself and Catherine Miller at the county to have future conversations. I have met with Pilar and Nick maybe a year ago, maybe off the time, but I've not recently.
Resources in Parks and Recreation.
I don't know the details enough to know what's even being proposed to support this. So I would weigh heavily on that next step in my own mind as to having the conversation to get more information as to what the city's role would be in that regional authority.
Well, I think it's actually, this is actually more information than we've had in the past, and so I'm thankful for that. I guess I think it's too important of a project to not, I guess for the record, say that we need to make sure that, however it is that you want to divvy that up with Parks and Recreation or Parks and other city staff is going to be up to you. You're the city manager. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to see the resources not enough resources provided so that, it becomes a failure. We want to make sure that it's successful. And so I think that there are some next steps that will be looking forward to, and we'll see what that brings. Thank you.
Councilor Ives. And then Councilor Rivera, then Councilor Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too appreciate the update. I mean, clearly it's not necessarily, in my mind, the report that was called for in the resolution, and the resolution in that initial section which calls for reporting back within 60 days does not necessarily say answer these 7 questions and have an independent review done within that time period, but it does raise the question of what we anticipate the time period to be. And I was sure if you had any insights that you could share on that front. I noticed the committee is now down to meeting once a month, so if you have a sense.
So, Mr. Mayor and Council and Councilor Ives, actually, this group is working towards a final in end of August, early September for establishing the soccer authority, giving them a direction with our recommendations. So part of the meeting that Pilar and Nick and I are planning to set up with the county manager and the city manager is to get their input, see what they think as we move forward, because we are a long way from the development or the millions of dollars that need to be done. The idea was to develop a soccer authority so that we had sharing with the city, the county, and the soccer membership that's out there.
And I understand that. I mean, clearly the notion is to have this facility serve northern New Mexico. I will say I suspect you'll find a little bit of resistance on the cities helping to establish the authority, at least until the metrics and some of the questions that are posed here are more fully answered. And if you're looking at August, that is a breath away, and September is 2 breaths away. So Godspeed.
Councilor Rivera.
Thank you, Mayor. Brian, there was a question about the makeup of the committee initially. I know that you were involved in that. Can you just share how you or who decided who was going to sit on this committee?
Mayor, Councilor Rivera, I don't recall that. I recall the conversations that we've had over and making sure that we had all interests covered. Make sure that various Nick as being a leader in the organization, as well as city county input and other inputs from economic development side and tourism side, pull all those resources together. But I don't necessarily recall how the names were selected, but we wanted to make sure we had a collaborative group that touched on tourism, economic development, the actual function of the league itself, Parks and Rec staff from the standpoint of field maintenance and what it would take to actually run the league as a whole and the authority as a whole.
You were involved in that, though, however?
From early on in the conversation, just that's what I was referring to about, I'm guessing, maybe a year or so ago in the early conversations, kicking it off, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rob and Pilar, for doing the work on this. I know there's a lot to be done, and really what I read in the report was baby steps in what is going to be a long journey. I would caution about the August or September date. I think that's a little bit aggressive, and from what I read from the report, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, and clearly I'd like to see it moving forward with all the questions answered and with a lot more thought process put into how this is all going to work out. So, and again, I think there's some legal aspects that probably need to be looked at with regards to the BLM and how the city and county would partner together to make this work, along with the soccer community itself. So don't be too aggressive, because we're asking for something really quick. We just want it to be done and done well. So if it takes longer than August or September, please do so, and make sure that we have everything answered. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'll be very brief, just echo particularly what Councilor Lindell said, and then also agree with Councilor Rivera. Just in addressing the seven items in the resolution, I think there's a lot of work there. But one thing I wanted to point out is that in the resolution, it says the private sector could provide for the capital funding to build and or renovate soccer facilities. Well, in the summary memo that we have, basically where we're headed, it says, wherein the local governments would carry the majority of the capital outlay costs, although the soccer community will also be in fundraising. So, that's really a major reversal almost from what was described in the resolution. And if you combine it with the language that's in the resolution that Councilor Lindell cited in terms of the offset to the Parks and Recs budget, to me, it would be very, very difficult to be able to support an authority. And in the meantime, or in addition, whether it's this authority or the sustainability authority that we had on the agenda, I really want to know kind of what, under state statute, kind of what authority does the authority have? I'm very concerned about losing our ability to control our financial destiny. And quite frankly, I'm thinking in terms of all the gross receipts tax discussions vis-a-vis the county. And when we realized that in 2005, the city of Santa Fe raised a gross receipts increment, that was the last time we raised it. Since then, there have been 7 increments raised by the county, 6 of those 7 affected the incorporated areas. I'm very concerned about our ability to control our financial destiny. So this is problematic. I think there's a lot of work to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the information. I am disappointed that it's almost over a year that we're getting this, because I thought that there was a lot of momentum and energy to work on this, and I know there still is. It's just that the reason why I supported the initial resolution is because it was talking about public-private partnerships with the goal of actually going out there to get funding that wouldn't be required from us as a government entity. So I was confused as well with Councilor Harris about the language saying that the local governments would carry the majority of the capital outlay costs, and I'm hoping you were referring to state at that moment, or in this case, because that was a conversation that state may have, or at the time, I don't think that's the case now, that we there may be a partnership. I've seen successful soccer fields that have been funded by the private sector, and so I was thinking that that would be the direction that you all were heading. The other thing is when you said about, Brian, you had said something about looking at piloting a soccer tournament, but from my understanding, our soccer fields are not in the condition to be able to have a soccer tournament at this time. Is that correct?
Councilor, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Villarreal, no, they're actually in much better shape now. We've spent some money this past year that we had as part of the master plan to redo the whole irrigation system and redo a number of the soccer fields out there, so they're in much better shape now than they were over a year and a half ago. And the answer, to just kind of follow up, there are a lot of different funding possibilities that's what our other focus group is right now helping us look at, so that it wouldn't only be the city and the county, but would be state, would be sponsorships, would be all different kinds. So no, it's not just those two. The only reason that it's been stated right now that way is because of the ownership.
Okay. Well, I think that there's some great opportunity for tournaments, and I would like to explore that. I guess I was always under the impression that more soccer fields had to be built in order to really have a robust tournament on our fields.
Correct.
Okay. Well, I'm just hoping we can get some more information that wasn't in this report, and I guess we'll just wait to hear back from you. Do you have a time frame that, other than the ones that you had indicated that may not be realistic, is there some other time periods you're thinking that you might be able to come back to us on this?
Well, we'll be having a meeting in August, so we will talk then about doing the updates, especially the 7 questions and those as well, so we can answer those a little better and get that back to you folks.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask you?
Councilor Rivera?
Pilar, can I ask you a couple questions? The first is, it's my understanding that we really couldn't look at public-private partnerships until we kind of hashed out the whole authority and how that was going to work. Is that your understanding as well?
Councilor Rivera, yes, that is true. And one of the issues we're having is we're really trying to focus on how we can cut costs, and we believe we've found some ways to dramatically cut the cost of the project. We're also looking at the public-private connection being that if we can cut costs significantly, we won't be talking about a $14 million project. We'll be talking about a $2 million project, which is significantly different. If we can do that, then the next step is to identify who's responsible for what. And none of us on the committee have the authority to make that decision, obviously. And so we have some broad ideas, but they're really not in a place that could be presented that would really serve any purpose. And so before we present those to the governing bodies, we'd like to meet with the city manager and the county manager to kind of see, are we on point? Does it make sense what we're saying? What can the local governments do and participate in? And so to say that we are in the very first baby step is an understatement. I mean, we are taking this with all the diligence and care that we can, including Councilor Harris. We are talking to the former Deputy Secretary for DFA. He's going to help us kind of understand what authority means and what the legal ramifications are of calling this an authority, and what the responsibilities are, and how it will impact the dialogue moving forward and the ultimate outcome. And it may not be an authority. Those are one of the questions we're trying to answer. Was that a proper use of the term, or do we need to look at it as something else? I can't say it enough. All of these questions we are taking very seriously, and we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We're not looking for money at all at this point. We're looking at this as a 2-year process. And in fact, we had discussed trying to get a significant timeline set, which would be where we could present our concept of what the authority would look like in August. But our first major deadline for even considering anything truly significant would be January 2018, that we would come forward with something that, after talking to the city manager, the county manager, and the city and county attorneys, getting their input, then we would reflect on that and continue the dialogue at that point, and then try to have something that's more descriptive and answers your questions, Councilor Rendell, at that point. So we're doing our due diligence. We know this is a significant project. We know that it can bring a lot to the community, and there's responsibility in that. We know that we are asking for public funding at some point as part of the partnership, and we're taking that very seriously. And so what you're seeing in this report isn't not being transparent. It's the group really trying to take slow pace on this and to reflect on all the matters that are at hand and the responsibility of a project of this kind.
Thank you. One final question with regards to summer use leagues and what, do you know what's going on with them? Are all the soccer programs, are they using the MRC now, or are they doing different things?
Councilor Rivera, it's my understanding that the leagues are not using the facility at the MRC. They're being forced to use the Downs, which is problematic because it's owned by Pewaukee Pueblo. And just recently, the Pueblo, without notice, canceled use of the facility for one of the tournaments. And if I may just briefly speak to the tournament issue, we are looking to bring in a built-in tournament, which means there's no responsibility on the part of the city to provide any services. The leagues don't have to do a lot. It's a pretty sizable tournament. It's 50 teams in the adult league. They're looking at late 2018 for the tournament, so that gives the soccer leagues and parks and recs the opportunity to kind of get those fields in a better condition. In September, the tournament purveyor is coming to Santa Fe to look at the area. He's been here before. He wants to bring a permanent tournament here. And so it's our hope that we can convince him that this is a good opportunity. The soccer leagues have been doing their own tournaments in an effort to prove and do due diligence that tournaments are beneficial to the city and that we can grow tournaments. The Rio Rapids League put together a tournament that's a 3x3, so it's half the size of a normal tournament. And they threw one last year. It's doubled in size when they did it this year. And we were pulling from Farmington, Durango, Amarillo, all over the region, really. Teams came to participate in this tournament. So our tournaments are growing, but we feel that we need to prove that the tournaments that there's substance to that argument, that we're not just saying, hey, we'll do tournaments and we'll see how it goes. We want to show you that we can do tournaments. And so in that effort, we're doing tournaments with the resources we have, and we're trying to encourage some regional and national tournaments to hold events here.
Do you think that's the tournament that Mr. Brown was referring to in the conversations with Brian and Councilor Lindell?
Councilor Rivera, yes.
Okay.
That is what he was speaking to.
All right, so that's not till 2018. And you said 50 teams. How many participants per team?
Councilor Rivera, there's approximately 16 to 20 players per team.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I had, Mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I just had a
Councilor Estes.
quick question. I'm glad you mentioned Pewaukee Pueblo, Pilar. I mean, the task force definitely concludes there's not enough soccer fields, but yet the Downs has been a great supplemental facility, right, for soccer. So has the task force, and I see there's no membership or representation by the Pueblo in the task force, so has the task force concluded that the Pueblo would not be a reliable partner that would allow the continued and sustained use of the Downs going forward, possibly under an authority?
Councilor Maestas, the experience that the soccer community has had with the Pueblo has been unreliable. They have an understanding, but it's tenuous at best. At any moment, the Pueblo will cancel use of the fields. And to speak to more membership of the authority, I think the working group, the county, the city, and the soccer leagues felt that because the city is so heavily involved by way of the patent on the BLM land, and it is a city project right now, that the city needed to be protected in the sense that the city's interest should be at the foremost in consideration, and then the county second and the league's third. And before we invite Reba County, you know, the legislators from that area would like to participate, we could invite many people to the table, including the schools. But as an effort to protect the city's interest, quite frankly, we thought that the initial group should be made up of the three primary stakeholders. And the city is one, the leagues are two, and the county has $500,000 in its budget for this project. And so those are the three, you know, vested parties at this point.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had, Mayor.
Okay, it's a lot of conversation on an informational item, so we're going to move on. Thanks, everybody. Okay, the next three items under the consent calendar, Councilor Ives, you've brought forward, so.
And Mr. Mayor,
item
with
C,
G and K, and with your permission, I would like to take them in reverse order.
Okay.
In part, I probably should apologize to Andrew Erdman for keeping him here, as my intent in pulling this was just to advise the governing body that this matter was considered by the Water Conservation Committee yesterday, which was in full support, so approved and recommended by the Water Conservation Committee. And with that, I would move to approve.
a second. Roll call.
Yes, Councillor Harris? Yes. Councillor Ives?
Yes.
Councillor Lindell? Yes. Councillor Maestas?
Yes.
Councillor Rivera?
Yes.
Councillor Villarreal?
Yes.
Councillor Dominguez? Yes. Mayor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion is approved.
Thank you, Andrew. Item G,
G.
request of approval of budget adjustment in the amount of, no, the councilor requested that we go in opposite
Go
order.
in reverse order. We'll get to C next. Sorry.
See next,
So
like
this
next
is G,
now, or do you
G
want to-
now,
Okay,
C
G
next.
now. Request for approval of
See
budget
soon.
adjustment in the amount of $1,567,788 to correct the 16-17 debt service for refunding the late FY 15-16 water debt service.
So I wasn't clear from the brief memo whether or not we had actually realized more funds or paid out more funds.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Councilor Ives, it's not that we realized more payment that went out. The payment to relieve the 2009 debt was paid. So during that process, actually created a negative in the budget of 1.5 million that we've carried on the books, and under the direction of the finance department, made a recommendation that we bring this forth to clear up the books. It doesn't change what it costs to pay off the 2009 debt.
And I'm all for clearing up the books that we must always need to be doing. I'm more worried about how it happened in the first place. And I know it states these corrections were missed in FY 16-17 due to the unexpected vacancy in the debt management position in finance. And I guess it worries me that we're concentrating so much information in single individuals that a mistake of $1.5 million plus was not caught. And I realize that's probably not a question for you, but a question for finance. And I'm happy to take it up with them. But yeah, I would hope that the department acts as a backstop on these issues to finance for these types of things, and that the division's review of the budget is such that even if finance misses something, you know, we don't lose track of $1.5 million. So that was all I had, and I would move to approve.
Second. Roll call.
Councillor Ives?
Yes.
Councillor Lindell? Councillor Maestas?
Yes.
Councillor Rivera?
Yes.
Councillor Villarreal? Councillor Dominguez? Councillor Harris? Mayor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
And also, Shannon, just wanted to say congratulations. I'm really happy that you're heading up public utilities. That's a nice work. Yeah. Moving on to item
C.
C, request for approval of annual internal audit plan.
Lisa, thank you for letting me take care of those quicker items. Just a number of questions on the audit plan, some to clear up a few things and some just wondering if we're necessarily focusing on all the right things first. So bear with me. I know the first item there is the Genevieve Chavez Community Center physical security. Nobody would argue that the safety and well-being of citizens of Santa Fe is a top priority, and I don't know why we would focus on this one facility as opposed to all our facilities, or is that too much to try and tackle? Do we not have sufficient policies on safety that are in place for all our facilities, that we have some sense that we are being efficient and effective in terms of providing security? Oh, and you're, yeah.
Councilor Eyes and members of the council, in regards to physical security specifically at the GCC, if you're talking about other facilities such as Fort Marcy and Salvador Perez, that type of facility, I think looking at the GCC, it gives us a good idea of what is happening at the other facilities. And frankly, the legwork for this piece of the audit has already been done, or for this audit has already been done. And it did give us some good insights into controls that we can implement throughout the city that can be used at the other facilities as well. I think that's the intention there. Not to specifically pick on that facility, but to use it as just as like a laboratory that we can, conduct this experiment in, and then we can take the results and apply it to other places as well.
Yep, I hear everything you say, and that makes great sense. No problems with that.
Okay.
The next one you identify as building permits and licenses, and the objective of this audit is to determine the city's compliance with CID regs regarding permits and licensing on construction projects.
Yes.
The city has its whole land use code, which talks about permits and all such things. Why are we looking at CID, and are we talking about only city construction projects?
Yes, we are talking just about city construction projects. We're not talking about people coming into the city to get permits. We're talking about the city getting permits to do construction projects. I've had, when I very first started 4 years ago, I had somebody come in and tell me that there was an issue with that, and we talked about it, and I had thought that issue was cleared up, and I've had that issue has been brought to my attention repeatedly. So I don't think it's been cleared up, and I think it warrants our attention. I'm concerned that there might be new building going on that is not getting the required permits, and I think we need to set the tone for, we're requiring people to get permits from us when they build, and we should be setting that tone and setting that standard, and that's what that's about.
And mind you, I don't have any problem with that. I'm just trying to figure out, everybody who comes to the city for a permit is getting a permit from the city, not from CID. Having the city issue its own permits suggests potential conflicts.
No,
is that why we're looking at CID, or?
Well, when the city builds something, they have to get a permit from CID. They don't get it from themselves.
Okay, that's the point I was unclear on. So, good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Love the ALGA peer review. I think that's very smart, given we'll go through that process the next year. So great to be prepared for that.
Thank you.
On the accounts payable, obviously we do have the new computing system for the city coming into place. And I would imagine there has been broad discussion about best practices on this matter as well as others. So I wasn't clear that this would be such a high priority, say, as on the next page, which details other audits as time permits. You have cash handling, which, as we know from the papers as recently as this morning, has been an issue that we have been called out on a little bit. So I'm wondering why accounts payable for duplicate payments and invoices, and granted, if that's happening, that's an issue, but with the new system going in place, I imagine much of that would be resolved in any event, and I know the people implementing the new system have talked about best practices. So should that be corrected as part of that new system implementation, in which case spending time on an audit of cash handling might be a little more productive?
And my answer to that, Councilor Ives and members of the council, would be that I'd like to give the city time to implement some of these new cash handling policies. I think the response has been great from management and from everybody, that there were some really good things that have come up as a result of that audit, but there's some complicated issues, and so they need time to implement that before I can go back in and audit. It doesn't do any good to just go back in, and it is very time consuming for me and non-productive, frankly, if I go in and it still hasn't been done. So if I give that a little bit of time. The accounts payable audit, I've actually already done some work with the city owns a financial tool called Hubble, where you can extract data out of the financial systems, and I've done some work with the people from Hubble to design a query that I can run on accounts payable that will return the data to me over a given period of time. So we've done an initial analysis on that, and it looks like, I'm not sure what I'm seeing there yet, but it's enough for me to want to take a closer look. And what I would hope would come out of that audit is and possibly if I can't get to this, what I would do is just work with Adam and finance or IT and ensure that there are system controls in place to ensure that we cannot have duplicate payments. For example, a system control designed to not allow use of a duplicate invoice would eliminate some of the problems I'm seeing on this initial query that I ran. The initial query that I ran, I got many hits for duplicates, but I can't tell without looking at it further if it's a single invoice being used for, the invoice might be for $10,000 and it's a single invoice used for 10 different purchases of, I don't know, I can't tell yet. I haven't done enough work, but it's interesting to me, so. Long answer to a short question.
Interesting to us as well. I appreciate that, because I did conceive that this was an issue that might be resolved with the new system, but if you're already well underway in doing this analysis and looking at it, so be it.
Okay.
On the next page, and it sounds like you have cash handling in mind to allow implementation of current control corrections before going into that. Absolutely. I think following up on the parking findings and following up on the lodger's tax findings are two significant ones from my perspective. And I would hope that given you're well on the way in terms of the Genoveva Chavez Center and the accounts payable system, that those two will be accomplishable. On the payroll one, obviously, Kronos has just been implemented, and that has been fully implemented with the exception of the special circumstance of police and fire. So hopefully that's one we may not even need, but be curious to get feedback from that, quite frankly.
So, Councilor Ives, it's the same kind of situation as with cash handling. Give it a little time. Yeah. And so that's why it's last on the list here, is that it's, although it would be good to do, I think it would provide some good information. Give it a little time for them to get the controls in place and make sure it's up and running right.
So I think what I would I know, turning to page 8 in the packet, page 3 in the plan, and this is under the 2019-2020, a reference to internal controls regarding procurement, and that the state auditor has estimated somewhere that 40% of all procurements in New Mexico are not in compliance with the state procurement code. Excessive violations were found regarding sole sourcing and piggybacking off of state price agreements. I just love to see that report so I understand what's being discussed there, because those issues do come up a number of times over the course of every year of our looking at the various contracts. So if you wouldn't mind sending, certainly to me, and I imagine other members of the governing body might be interested as well, the information on that so I can better understand it. Would appreciate that.
Okay.
Finally, on the issue of technical competence, the last line there says the technical competence of the internal auditor was taken into consideration for all audits on 2017-2018 audit plan. The only reason that concerns me is it suggests that there might be audits we're not taking on, which potentially should be taking on because of technical competence issues. So I'm just trying to eliminate that as a possible rationale.
The only area that I don't have the certifications or where I would consider myself to be as technically competent as I would like to be is as a fraud auditor. And I've taken steps to remediate that by, I plan on taking the certified fraud examiner test to get that certification sometime perhaps over the next year. I don't know how I'm going to fit that in with my schedule, but I am considering that. But it would be helpful to have some additional staff that had those qualifications.
No argument there, and I know we have talked about capacity in the city attorney's office to engage third parties to facilitate investigations of that sort. So hopefully we have that base covered. I do note that a lot of the rationale for the various audits proposed does have to do with fraud and potential
Yes, it
abuse.
does.
So, okay. The one thing I would propose to change in your 3-year rolling audit plan, if it's acceptable, is to move the 2 follow-up items to be the first 2 items under the other audits as time permits, and maybe move the cash handling, as you said yourself, you're going to wait for implementation of the policy changes that have already been proposed. So maybe put the cash handling down above payroll and move the parking and lodgers tax up to the first 2 follow-up items.
I think I need to bring this back up to the audit committee because they do approve it and they did approve this plan. But I will, I think that could very easily be done. I didn't mean to present these necessarily in the order that they would be accomplished either. So perhaps we can just look at it from that perspective, and I can just work on them in that capacity. Also, I would add that follow-up findings will also be dealing with cash handling from the GCC that came up at audit committee today. They'll be issuing me, Parks will be issuing me a monthly report on their status of where they're at with clearing the findings. Some of the remediation dates I felt were a little aggressive given the types of issues, but Mr. Carter feels he can do that, and so he will be providing information to me as to where he's at, or a status report on a monthly basis. So we'll include that there too.
I appreciate that, and I think understanding these as not necessarily in priority order is helpful. Okay. So I would move to approve.
Councilor Dominguez?
I'll second, I guess, for purposes of discussion.
Okay.
So I asked for some language at Finance Committee, and I don't see anything. Did you prepare anything?
The language in regards to, okay, I wrote that down. So the risk-based analysis, and you wanted to know if, so in regards to, no, I haven't prepared anything at this point.
So Brian, one of the things that came up at finance was making sure that we could come up with some language that we could incorporate into this, was to assess staffing levels as well. Because we've been able to provide the city manager's office with support staff. We've been able to provide the finance department with support staff. And as the audit plan goes through, I mean, as you begin to work on all of these objectives, you know, we need to make sure that if there's a depletion or if there's a need to not deplete staff anymore in certain areas, that we do that. And I'm a little disappointed that I don't see any language to address that.
Counselor or Dominguez, could you just clarify to me what language you would like in there? And I'm glad to revise the plan. You want the language per audit as to staff resources that it would take from internal audit or from the
for instance,
department?
And we'll be able to bring some of this up, maybe with the stuff that's coming before us, I guess with the GC3. But you can't just deplete staff, take positions away, and not expect for there to be some gaps that are left. And that's what I want to find out. Is because because at the Chavez Center we took away the administrative assistant, or they're not at the Chavez Center anymore. They're in Parks and Recreation. What kind of impact does that have on cash handling policies? And that's just an example. I don't know how else. You know, we had the Parks bond audit, right? Was there some structural deficits there or deficiencies there that led to that? In other words, I want to, as part of this audit, I want to make sure that staffing levels are somehow addressed, whether because of the technology and the systems that we have in place, they're appropriate. That, you know, I know that we're kind of in a work. There's things that are a work in progress with the RBA, and so I was just really looking for some simple language that would, you know, have staff in this plan as part of the objective to make sure that staffing levels are considered.
Mayor, Councilor Dominguez, I think I understand what you're asking for. So basically, under each item, as an item's being reviewed, have it as a subcategory, or I don't know how you want to look at it, but did the staffing levels result in any of the challenges that were being investigated, and basically as part of the evaluation, also look at the staffing levels, example, cash handling, as was called out. How did the cash handling and the staffing levels at the Chavez Center, did the staffing levels affect the performance of cash handling at the Chavez Center?
Well, there and
I mean, using that as an example, but have one of the focus points being, is there adequate staff to cover what's being looked at, the performance?
Well, not even performance. I you know, I want to know whether or not we have the proper staff levels, and whether or not, if we don't, if that's, you know, something that needs to be addressed and needs to be part of this. But I'm still kind of curious to find out why I guess maybe I should have just expected myself to come up with the language at finance, and so hopefully you captured that intent at the finance committee meeting.
Councilor Dominguez, I think I understand clearly what you're asking for now, and I can come up with that language and revise the plan to reflect that language if you prefer, and present it back at the next meeting, or?
No, I'm happy to just make it for the record that be part of this, but just so that it's clear, internal controls isn't enough.
Okay.
Right? I mean, that's part of it. There's systemic issues, I think, that, you know, are a part of it. But across the city, I mean, again, we've made sure that the city manager has the resources that is needed, the city manager's office. Finance, I think, you know, did some reorganization and even created a position there. That one of the reasons that we didn't do across the board cuts in our budget was because we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to eliminate critical, positions that were critical in making sure that the government is functioning and effective and efficient and all that other stuff. Well, I think that needs to be part of this internal audit, is making sure that we have the proper staffing levels to ensure that some of these things don't happen. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. I have one. Good evening. When you looked at the GCC, it's my understanding that we had looked at that some years ago, that there was an existing report by Julie Berman. Did you look at that?
No, Counselor Lindell, no, I did not.
She was worked in the, I think, city manager's office a number of years ago. No? We don't have that? You remember it? Okay. The other thing that I'm just curious about with this, and it might be a question for Brian, is it seems like some years ago we had some problems with cash management with parking. And I'm wondering if from that, is every department, did we review every department then with cash management, or did we go through and figure out, was that something that we did citywide with cash management?
Mayor, Councilor Lindell, I can't answer if we did that department, hit every department. With the latest cash handling at the Chavez Center, I've tasked the finance department to look at cash handling citywide, develop a policy and procedure citywide, and then, so it's overarching, and then maybe there's specifics as it pertains to the Chavez Center, specific as it pertains to parking, specifics as it pertains to utility billing and other places. But overarching, this is how we do cash handling, to document that and make sure that it is citywide. So I can't answer specifically if we looked at it individually previously, but we are looking at overarching and then individually to support the findings at the Chavez Center, as well as any findings that may have been from the past at parking.
Thank you. Was there a motion? Thank you, Mayor. I'm done.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, I guess on the point of cash management, I recall touring our security contractors' facilities, and one thing that the contractor mentioned was that we provide video surveillance of all cash handling in the parking division, but I'm not sure if we do the same for other cash handling departments like the Chavez Center. So do we have a policy where we, just as a deterrent, obviously if things go awry, we can go back to the video during an investigation, but do we have an across-the-board policy for providing video surveillance of all cash handling within city government?
Mayor, Councilor Maestas, yes, we have cameras at all cash handling facilities, and they're monitored. Majority of them are by Chavez Security, I believe, where the cameras and the data is stored at their facilities and then backed up. But yes, we do.
So is that includes the GCCC?
Mayor, Councilor Maestas, that is correct.
Okay. All right, I'm going to take a step back. Lisa, we usually get a phone call from you kind of asking us for ideas for the next audit plan. I haven't had a call from you in a while. I don't know if that was part of your standard operating procedure, or if you feel like, hey, you know what, my inbox is full, this plan is chock full of different efforts. We don't need additional input from the governing body, but we do hear the plan and approve it. So what happened to those calls to governing body members for?
Councilor Maestas and members of the council, it is my belief that I sent an email out to the councilors asking them for their input on the audit plan, probably back in February. I can try to trace that down. I either sent it out or asked the legal department to send it out, but I do believe that went out. I did not get any responses, so maybe it didn't go out. If it didn't, I apologize, but I do send one every year.
We get a lot of emails, and maybe I missed it.
Yeah, no, I really value your input, and if I don't ask for it ever, please feel free to give it to me. at any rate. So I really appreciate it, actually.
Sure. The only issue I wanted to mention, I guess, before I yield the floor is, when we looked at setting up some kind of an impartial investigative arm of the city, some kind of Office of Inspector General, I learned about how we deal with kind of fraud, waste, and abuse investigations throughout the city. And I learned, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, was that the PD, they have their own way of conducting their investigations, and they have, I believe, a contractor. I think HR, Human Resources, has their own method of investigating fraud, waste, and abuse because of certain laws surrounding personnel. And then there's your area. But I don't get the sense that you have additional resources to contract out any investigations, whether they be complex or whether if it gets to be too much and you're shifting priorities, well, then you could be working on these, for a long, long time. And so I guess I'm asking the question, why haven't we appropriated resources to Lisa's shop to give her the ability and capacity to contract out any kind of investigations to an outside contractor? Is there a reason why we haven't done that?
Mayor, councilors, Councilor Maestas, money is available in my fund, and when we discussed it, we discussed doing it through council and creating a privileged relationship with council, hiring an investigation and getting a legal opinion at the end, which would then be made public, but it would be a completely outside authority through the legal department. So we did appropriate funds in my department.
This year, yeah.
So I guess maybe in the plan, if you could identify which certain areas of review that could be contracted out, I think that would help. Again, it doesn't have to be based on its complexity. It could be that you're overwhelmed with your existing staff and that you need to hire somebody from the outside, just to assure us that that these things are moving forward, because there's that proviso that you put in there, this is subject to shifting priorities, and I think what that says, it's maybe an indirect message that resources are limited and we can't really guarantee when we might finish these efforts and accept new efforts. So I'm just urging the administration to consider maybe more formalizing that decision-making process and determining which reviews or even investigations would warrant hiring an outside contractor.
Thank you.
That's all I had. Thank you, Mayor.
Second, roll call.
Councilor Lindell. Councilor Maestas.
Yes.
Councilor Rivera.
Yes.
Councilor Villarreal.
Yes.
Councilor Dominguez. Councilor Harris.
Yes.
Councilor Ives.
Yes.
And Mayor Gonzalez.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 11, pursuant to Resolution 2011-56 and Section 1-7.11, review and update of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act, inspection of Public Records Act, City of Santa Fe Ethics Ordinance, and New Mexico Governmental Conduct Act. Mr. Shanna.
Good evening. Welcome to the annual summer refresher on ethics. Okay. City Code Section 1-711 states this: Code of Ethics shall be reviewed by the governing body on an annual basis no later than the June 30th of each year. Staff could have stuck this item on the agenda of your last meeting in June, but I understand your afternoon session didn't end until 7:30. So tonight I'm going to spend 10 minutes, 5 minutes highlighting the 5 key points in the Code of Ethics, and then I'm going to do a minute explanation of a 4-minute video clip that Joe's going to set up for me. So in the past, I have tried to scare you into compliance. I've tried to lecture you into compliance, and our collective blood pressure is way too high for that approach. So tonight I'm trying a simpler approach. I read in the newspaper that the White House prepared for the recent G20 summit, not with scare tactics, binders, or PowerPoints, but with messages written like Twitter messages. Key points with 100 letters or less. So I will take my 5 key points and I'll end up with a Twitter message to reinforce the point. Point number 1, the city clerk has handed out on your table a letter to you of the annual ethics registration form. City Code Section 176B says this information shall be updated every July. So please fill it out and return it to the city clerk by the end of July, or as I should say, if we could go to the overhead, see if this works. Can we go to the overhead? Is it on?
The document camera, Adrian, please.
Okay, so right. So to reinforce point number 1, fill out ethics form in July, hashtag get it done. That one went off. Can you put that? But they need to see it. There we go. Great. All right. Point number 2 of emphasis. It's summer. It's opera season. Soon it'll be wine and chili festival season, the nonprofit fundraiser school season. So remember, in the Code of Ethics, you can accept free tickets up to $250 related to your role as a city councilor ambassador. But you have to fill out a report within 10 days of the event and provide it to the city clerk under City Code 177A1A. And we'll go to the projector again. Get gift and ticket forms to city clerk within 10 days of event fast. All right, point number 3. This $250 is an aggregate figure for you and your spouse or partner. You can't get a free ticket or a comp ticket of $250 for you and a free ticket of $250 for your partner. That's $500. So go back to the overhead. Gift includes your partner / spouse, hashtag sad. Maybe no 2 tickets anymore, question mark. Okay, number 4, I want to clarify how we calculate the amount, because some of you do get offered tickets of $300 or $500. Now I know there's a lot of great chefs in Santa Fe, but that's too much for the price of food. So of course, most of that amount is the charitable amount or the charitable markup to help run the charity. So the way to calculate that amount is you take the face value of the ticket price and then ask the donor what the charitable amount is, and then subtract. So for a $500 ticket, it may be a $400 charitable markup or deduction. And they should know that amount, because some folks do need to notate that on their taxes. So again, if it's a $500 ticket, $400 is a charitable amount, then the gift value is actually $100. And that is under the $250, so that's permissible if reported to the city clerk. And again, we'll go to the screen, I'll tweet out another quick remark. Gift amount is the ticket price minus tax deductible amount, hashtag gift math. Okay, number 5, when we were growing up, our word was and our handshake was our bond, right? It meant something. Now, if it didn't happen in email, it never happened, and recent events in the last 48 hours reinforce that. We continue to get a lot of IPRA emails for your emails. And it's not just from the press, it's from the public. They just love to see them. And I used to say in my previous presentations, organize all your emails in topic folders. Don't write something that would make your family blush if it was in the Santa Fe New Mexican, but no more. The IT department now has access to all your emails, and we can search by terms. So now I say, use email, but know that it's a public document. If there's an IPRA request, I get to read it. So don't write something that would make me blush. And I don't care what device you use, a public or private account or device, if you're discussing public business, it's subject to IPRA. And you need to turn that over. And don't think you can avoid this issue by using a private phone or a private account, because there's always cross-pollination on email chains. So if you're using a private email account and there's an email chain with a CC and has a government account on it, well, I have access to that email, and I get it from IT. And if I ask you for your emails and you turn over nothing, I know that you're not providing me the documents, and I'm going to ask for your phone, because I know you have something. So my last Twitter message to you, thanks. Your emails, except those to the city attorney's office, are public transparency. Okay, I promised not to get serious and lecture you, and here I go lecturing again, so let's lighten it up a little bit. Some of us in City Hall are amateur thespians and got together with the very brilliant Joe Abeta to make what we hope to be a permanent training video for new counselors, new commissioners, and new committee members that can be used again and again once you make your appointments. Now, I should say it's based on the TV show The Office. It's a fake documentary where I play the worst, most cringe-worthy committee member, and I'm the villain, okay? The public's not the villain, I'm the villain. And we try to use humor to teach, but then we have quiz questions to reinforce the ethical way to act. We hope to complete this video and send it out to you later this summer once we're done editing and getting approved from HR in the city manager's office. Again, the long-term plan is to burn CDs or stick drives for new counselors and appointees, etc. Now, in this 4-minute clip, you will see me as the villain, and I'll be on a fictional three-person Parks Committee. It does make some mundane points like how to act or not act during the public comment period, but we do take on some serious matters like sexual harassment, and you'll see that in the clip. So in this clip, you'll see me act very poorly to the public, and then you'll see me using texting to sexually harass a woman who I think is the city liaison or the city staff member. And then I get my comeuppance. Okay, Joe, let's see if this works.
Another big day in the video journey. Welcome to the second meeting.
Thank you for approving the agenda. Under new business, I want to introduce our city liaison, CJ. CJ's contact number and text number are right there on the page for you.
The staff liaison puts the meeting packet together and can do limited research for you.
Lesson number 4. If you have an important newspaper article or research document you want to share with the committee, you should A, give it to the liaison to put it in the packet, or B, email it yourself to the other committee members and create an electronic quorum. The answer is A, give it to the liaison to put it in the packet.
Okay, let's get started.
Video Diary. You can learn all you need to know about people by watching the show Project Runway. That's the show about fashion designers and Heidi Klum, and they have all these buzzwords and phrases like, just make it work, or if fashion was easy, everyone would look beautiful, or you dress how you want to be treated. So let's take CJ, for example. She's one of these millennials, and they dress like, this, combination of Vampire Diaries and Flashdance. That she dresses how she wants to be treated. So if she dresses flirty, well, I'm going to flirt with her. That's how you read people. That's how you deal with people. I know you say, well, this is an ethics video. Don't judge a book by its cover. But that's all last century thinking. We judge magazines by our covers, right? And magazines are more popular than books. True fact.
No, he's wrong. 100% wrong.
Is that what he said? I think I need to take a shower.
We've reached the point in the agenda for public comment. Anyone have public comment?
Hello, my name is Anna Schott. I'm a little nervous, I'm sorry. But I just found out that Santa Fe is listed as a creative city by UNESCO, and I don't know why we're not getting paid by the United Nations to enforce international law. And next, I would like City Hall to have a kitchen with an oven. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Horace Go West.
Hello, is there anybody in there? Just not if you can hear me. Is there anyone home?
There is a shocking lack of transparency in Santa Fe.
Wrong.
This committee should do more.
Wrong.
We need public bathrooms on the plaza.
Wrong.
What does that have to do with transparency? Do you want like a clear stall anyway? You should be locked up. You should have a lock stall.
Okay, is there an app for that?
Lesson number 5. During public comment, you can A, yell right back at the public, or B, pay attention and take notes. The correct answer is B, pay attention and take notes.
Okay, and we're adjourned. Thanks, folks.
Hey, CJ. Hey, CJ.
I'm CJ.
You're CJ? I'm flattered by the text. And it's nice that somebody out there finds me attractive. But I'm already taken.
Great. Thanks, Joe. I left you speechless. If you have questions, you can ask me offline. I'm sure you will. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Zach. And appreciate you bringing some humor to some serious items, and to make it easy and step-by-step format is good. And I think the idea of trying to get it on some type of media platform so we can get it out to the entire, not only to the boards and the committees that serve, but even to the public so that they understand the ethics that we're governed by as well is very helpful. Thank you. Thanks for making it fun. You're great. I want you to stay as an attorney and not try and go into the movie business, so even though he wants to be. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that and look forward to the final version. Moving on to item 12, matters from the city manager.
Mayor, I have none.
Matters from the city attorney. Hold on a second. So how long do you think executive session will take?
Mayor, probably 30 minutes at the most.
So let's go ahead and really quickly, let's go ahead and go into an executive session, and then we'll come out for matters from the clerk and from the governing body. Councilor Rivera.
Mayor, I move that the governing body go into executive session to discuss the matters listed on the agenda in accordance with the recommendation of the city attorney.
Second.
Roll call.
Yes, Councillor Maestas?
Yes.
Councillor Rivera?
Yes.
Councillor Villarreal? Yes. Councillor Dominguez? Yes. Councillor Harris? Yes. Councillor Ives?
Yes.
Councillor Lindell? Yes. Mayor Gonzalez?
Yes. So for members of the public, we will return at 7:15. Yeah.
Always keep a hundy inside. Oh, yeah. Bail money. Old habits.
Yeah? Ready?
I'm ready, Teddy.
Yeah, Friday, up next Tuesday or something. I haven't looked at the calendar, but I think I can. How about you?
Yeah, I'm fine. I've already accepted.
I will.
Good evening, everybody. Councilor Rivera?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the governing body come out of executive session, stating for the record that the discussion in executive session was limited to the matters noted on the agenda.
Thank you. Roll call.
Yes, sir. Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Villarreal? Yes. Councilor Dominguez? Yes. Councilor Harris?
Yes.
Councilor Ives? Is not here. Councilor Lindell? Councilor Maestas?
Yes.
And Mayor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion is approved.
Moving on to item 14.
Excuse me, Mayor, I
I'm
have
sorry.
an action item related to executive session.
Okay.
I move to approve the ground lease for the real property at 1730 Llano Street, where the Lafarge Library is located, upon the terms and conditions discussed in executive session, on the condition that a provision is incorporated in the lease that permits the city to terminate the lease without penalty upon 120 days prior written notice, with title of all improvements under the lease vesting on the 121st day in the lesser.
Second.
Roll call.
Yes.
Councilor Dominguez? Yes. Councilor Harris? Yes. Councilor Ives? Yes. Councilor Lindell? Yes. Councilor Maestas?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
And Mayor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion is approved.
Moving on to item 14, matters from the city clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. I did just want to bring up, we had a request from the Municipal League to send a list of our voting delegates, so I wanted to know who's attending the New Mexico Municipal League Conference. I believe that's in August. It's at Clovis.
I'll be attending.
Okay,
So will I.
okay. So Mayor, you want me to put you as the voting delegate and Councilor Maestas as the alternate?
No, I think, Councilor Maestas has been serving as our delegate, so I'm okay with
And you'll be the
be
alternate?
the alternate. Yep.
Okay, no one else going? Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on, matters from the governing board. Councilor Maestas.
Yes, Mayor. Excuse me. I think many of us read about it was an in-depth story about the condition of our parks. And, you know, look, I know our employees are doing a great job, but anytime somebody goes out there and does some kind of an evaluation and assesses a grade to any of our city facilities, me as a counselor, obviously I sit up and take interest. And so I just wanted to ask you, Brian, is staff going to respond, I guess, to the findings of the newspaper's in-depth story on the condition of our parks? Is there anything done just in response to that story?
Mayor, Councilor Maestas, I'm not sure of a formal response if we're going to be issuing one or not, but I look at it as an opportunity we've been graded by the public, and it was, as I understand, it was a survey that was done through the New Mexican, and take that into note and look at it as an opportunity to move forward with creating a better atmosphere at the park, so that next time it's done, whether we do it ourselves, I don't think it's a bad approach for us to monitor ourselves and grade ourselves, whether it's us doing it ourselves or the public doing it themselves in the future, that we raise up from the average of B- to an A, and I think we should always strive for that. So I think definitely using it as a learning tool and working with staff to come up with a plan to address some of the concerns.
And I guess, it is the middle of the summer, so maybe if staff can go through some of those findings, and if there's some easy fixes, for example, at Patrick Smith Park, I think one of the findings was that one of the basketball court, one of the backboards didn't have a goal, and I think the other goal was bent pretty badly. So, kids are still off for the summer. So if there are, some low-cost, high-impact improvements that we can do in response to kind of this evaluation of our parks, I think we should do it. And then I'm happy to follow up, offline with you, Brian, to talk specifically about the parks in District 2. The other thing, too, is I'll be bringing forward some legislation to adopt some economic development code amendments from a previous comprehensive resolution. I'm allowing enough time for Matt Brown to kind of take a look at these and see if there's any additional tweaking that needs to be done. But I know that, we all were briefed by staff, and they did share, I think, all the proposed code amendments, but I'm not aware of anything else that needs to be done to at least get that part of the code updated. Is there anything else, Brian, that you feel needs to be done? But I do feel, as a courtesy to Matt, that he should take a look at this and be familiar with these changes.
Mayor, Council Masters, I'm not aware of any additional items. I definitely appreciate Matt Brown's looking at it from a different lens as a newcomer to the position he holds now. And I think it's we want him to buy into that, whatever that is, and I value any input he has. So he's committed to getting that done within the next 2 weeks so it can be heard at council or initiated at the next council meeting.
Okay, thank you. The last thing, I don't know if I need to restate, I think my intent to make a motion to rescind our decision on the ranked choice voting at the next meeting.
Mayor, Councilor Mastis, no, I think your intent was clear earlier in the meeting.
All right,
But also, just along those lines, I think the councilor's intent was to notice it for a public hearing as well, so we'll be in the 7 o'clock time period.
That's correct, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I had, Mayor. Thanks.
Councilor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't read the full title, but I'm introducing an ordinance relating to the telecommunications in the public rights-of-way. That the committee schedule is there. It's very ambitious, but to get to a public hearing on the 30th of August. A few things. Many of you may have seen some of the comments, mostly from folks in Nava Ade, including the past president of the HOA regarding the fireworks, that was held this year at Santa Fe Place. It was very disruptive. So Ray Sandoval has taken the lead and is responding. He's meeting with Kim Wiley Friday. I've agreed to join. I've asked to join that meeting. And then there's with the Nava Ade HOA in August. So I think there needs to be some discussion right away about kind of what happened, what needs to be done, and really consideration if that's the best place to have the full-on fireworks display that we had. Many of you have also seen a related issue in District 4 is the homeless encampment and the documentation on the drug use, drug paraphernalia. Much of it's in the state site that is really kind of in the middle of Arroyo Chamisa, or to the north of Arroyo Chamisa, kind of where Richards Avenue ends on both sides. Brian, I'd like for you to follow up with this, perhaps with the police department and the state themselves, to see what can be done just to really find out. I mean, we saw the photographs. I don't know if people had a chance to review the photographs. Many of them were around Mark Brandt Park, which is that stretch. Think of it as a boulevard on Siringo Road, particularly under the various bridges that we have there. So that's something that I'd like to know more about. we have a couple projects that are underway. The library ADA work should start later this month, about the 27th, I believe. And we all have seen the refurbishing of City Hall, which I think is important. And as we know, we've added redoing all the paint rather than through our own staff. We've contracted this. And so my question is on a project. This has the status of the Fort Marcy box culvert, in other words, the bridge. Haven't heard much, haven't been by, don't know if it's underway. All I know is that some people were concerned about the trees that were removed. But Brian, do you know if that project is going to is underway? I mean, it would have to be underway in time for Sozopra.
Mayor, Councilor Harris, I've been told by staff that it is underway, and it will be on schedule and finished prior to Zozobra.
Good.
But I will ask also for a written update that I can share with the council as a whole, looking at the schedule and making sure that how it lines out.
Okay, very good. And in closing, I want to thank people, and a number of people, both in this body and staff, sign a condolence card for my wife in the passing of her mother. I very much appreciate it, and my wife was touched. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor
Thank you,
Harris. Councilor Lindell.
Thank you, Mayor. Brian, I just wanted to bring up, and I forwarded to you, I think all councilors got a copy of a email from some folks that are concerned about a adult bookstore going in at 1494 Cerrillos, and perhaps some building going on there that isn't permitted. The building happening without obtaining a permit, just to clarify that. So if you could look into that, and I think most people did get that email, I'm not sure, but if you could look into that and get back to us, that would be great. And I just had one other clarification. I continue to read in numerous places that the legislation that I'm bringing forward, the changes to the animal ordinance, that it has taken on a life of its own, being called a circus ban. There is no part of that legislation that is a circus ban. It has to do with exotic animal acts. So I just wanted to make a clarification on that. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, on the rumors about this adult bookstore at the old Moodoo Noodles property, I did ask Lisa, and she said there's been no formal application or any, formal paperwork filed with land use. So, I did follow up on that, but if I wasn't aware of any building going on, so I think we should probably send code enforcement over there.
Nighttime, building going on at nighttime with out-of-state crews there.
But thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you. I have no items at this time. Councilor Dominguez.
Just real quick, a couple of things. I wanted to clarify, Councilor Maestas, on the RCV. The next agenda won't be the public hearing. It'll be the actual hearing.
Right. So if it's
So I just want to make sure that the public knows that at the next meeting is not going to be the public hearing. It's going to be after we take action on that is when the public hearing is going to happen.
So from my understanding, it's a two-step process. One would be to notice, to notice whether there'd be consideration to rescind the action, correct?
Mayor, councilors, in fact, the notice has been provided tonight and will also be provided by the agenda. So the discussion and hearing would immediately follow that.
Okay.
So it will be at the next meeting.
It is rescinded. The second item would be
Yeah, with respect to the ranked choice voting. The other one may be at a following meeting just because of notice requirements relating to ordinances.
The other one,
The safe flex storage.
okay. I just wanted to make sure that people know that there could be a public hearing at the next meeting. It's not gonna, we're not gonna jump a meeting. Okay. I wanted to also thank you, Brian, if you can thank park staff for the work that they've done in addressing some of the parks issues that have kind of come up through the media. And I know it's a lot of work, and we've asked you to make sure that there's proper staffing levels for that as well. I know that at a couple of meetings prior, I asked staff to put out a schedule on when the medians were gonna get cut as part of that effort as well, and so I know that Airport Road is looking pretty good and has been done. So just thank the hardworking staff for the work that they do for the citizens of this community in those regards. With that though, I think that certainly because of the media attention that it's gotten and some of the discussion that has been had here tonight and some of the emails that have gone around, you need to continue to look at those staffing levels throughout the budget cycles. And so I know that at one point we've reduced staff significantly, especially in parks, and it has obviously having an impact in it. It's consistent with what I said before about making sure that we have staffing levels appropriate across the city as well. And then the last thing is, just so that the governing body knows, I know that I've promised you all a rewrite of the Children and Youth Commission legislation or ordinance. Just to let you know, it is coming. I purposely waited to not introduce it until maybe the next meeting, only because they're having their pre-annual strategic planning meeting coming up Friday, I believe. And so I want to at least give them a heads up about what's happening. It's really not significant, I don't think, but it could be structurally, there's going to be some change in the structure and the way it's organized. And so just anticipate that after we get to that pre-strategic planning meeting, and then I'll be bringing it forward. That's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilor Villarreal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to reiterate, along with Councilor Maestas, my desire to revisit the ranked choice voting, mostly because there's been new information provided for us that I want to understand better. I didn't feel like I had all my questions answered at the last meeting, and I also feel like it would be important for my colleagues that were not at the meeting to be able to have the opportunity to vote. I would like to see a representative of Secretary of State to have to attend, so at least we can hear from them directly, not just about the certification, but maybe even how they could be of assistance to us. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Councilor Ives.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It being my evening for odd motions, when I walked back in the room after executive session, I thought the vote was on coming out of executive session. As it turns out, it was actually an action item on number 14. And I realized as we were leaving executive session that the school district was represented by one of my wife's partners at Cuddy and McCarthy. So with the indulgence of the council, what I would propose, and I will make a motion to rescind that vote and then leave the room so that that matter could be voted on again.
Mayor, councilors, Councilor Ives, in fact, I came in with you and the vote had already been taken. So you weren't present for the vote? Oh, you voted on it? What?
Yeah, I thought we were voting to come out of executive session, so.
So much for Zach's.
So I would move to rescind the vote on item number 14 in order that you might retake that vote without me present.
Okay.
Requiring a vote of 6.
All right. Is there that's a motion? Is there a second?
I'll second, but just parliamentarian, are you able to make that motion even though you want to?
Well, oddly enough, I voted in favor, so in that sense, I have authority in that capacity on a motion to reconsider.
Well, just for the record, then I don't really see a.
But if you wanted to make the motion, I'm happy to withdraw it and allow it to be made by another member.
On. So let's, is there any discussion? Roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes. Councilor, do you want to finish any of your other issues before you walk out? Do you have it?
Nothing else.
But you did your motion to, your request to put on for a discussion item, the storage units.
If you'd like me to go
It's already
over that
noted?
again,
Okay,
simply.
all done. All right, thank you, Counselor.
Before the counselor leaves, with regards to that, I have a planned vacation with my family the week of August 7th, and this is in my district, so I don't know if there's any time requirements with this, but I would like to be here for that, so if you would indulge me in that, that would be great.
Mayor, Councilors, Council Rivera, the official notice, the intent to make the motion has been announced. The official notice will be provided in the agenda of the meeting, so we can arrange to have that heard at a time when you're present.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Counselor Ives, you can excuse yourself if you would like. And then Counselor Rivera, on to you, and then if you wouldn't mind making the new motion on executive session.
Okay, I think I brought up my only issue with
Okay.
counselor, and then just to clarify some understanding about how these are going to work. So if there's a public hearing regardless of whether there's a motion to reconsider or not.
The motion to rescind will be voted on first, and then there will be an item on the agenda for a discussion and public hearing, depending on which we're talking about, in the event that the motion to rescind succeeds.
And if it does not, then there's no public hearing.
Then the vote is not rescinded, and there will be no public hearing.
Okay, just trying to keep my head clear on that. And then the last thing, Brian, with the, and I think you and I had a discussion about this, but with regards to the weeds and the medians, I think the crew that was hired to take care of that didn't start till, or the process didn't start till July, if I'm correct, with the start of the new fiscal year. If we could incorporate some funding into the end of the fiscal year that goes into the beginning of the new fiscal year, because I think once they started in July, and I think we still haven't hired all the crews that are going to help with that project, they're already months behind the ball. The weeds are already 6 weeks ahead of them, 10 weeks ahead of them, so that makes things difficult. They're playing catch up from the beginning, so if you can comment on that or put some thought into that?
Mayor, Councilor Rivera, yes, there's been thought put into that. As approved during the council process and the budget process for this fiscal year, which started July 1st, we added 15 parks staff to that. We advertised the positions with enough time. We started the advertisement of positions with enough time to hire them so they could be effective July 1st, start July 1st, or I think it would end up being July 3rd, which was the Monday. And however, we've not been able to fill those vacancies. But from a funding standpoint, you are correct. The funding starts July 1st, but it's, our grow season spans 2 fiscal years at the beginning and the end. That funding is available for the end. Next year, the funding will be in the budget, so we'll be advertising those positions when we hire the other seasonal positions as well. I think one of the challenges we have, here we are looking at hiring seasonal staff after seasonal staff throughout the city, not even only the city, have already been hired. So we're looking to answer, kind of address what Councilor Dominguez has also raised. We're looking at creative solutions. We brought previously looking at private landscaping contractors to assist. Challenge here again is, and I've spoken with one owner of a landscaping contractor here in town. They have the same problem we'll have. They have to ramp up staff. And they also like to try to maintain staff year-round rather than hire fire. They maintain staff by doing snow plowing in the winter and try to keep that base staff. So it's just a challenge. But that said, we reached out to the Corrections Department today. They are willing and able to help us on some of the longer stretch meetings as they have in past years. And we were going to come up with a game plan with that. We're also looking at and exploring, and I'll use this term loosely, using YouthWorks type contracts and or staff or relationships we have to see if we can help supplement our existing staff, especially for this time of year. Towards the end of the season, we'll hopefully be up and running, but the goal is to try to, you're right, we're a month behind, but in future years, now that we have the 15 additional staff, or 15 additional positions, we should be well at hand.
Okay, thank you. Mayor, with that, back to the action item regarding executive session, I move to approve the ground lease for the real property at 1730 Llano Street, where the Lafarge Library is located, upon the terms and conditions discussed in executive session, on the condition that a provision is incorporated in the lease that permits the city to terminate the lease without penalty upon 120 days prior written notice, with title to all improvements under the lease vesting on the 121st day in the lesser.
Roll call.
Counselor Harris?
Yes.
Counselor Lindell? Yes. Counselor Maestas?
Yes.
Counselor Rivera?
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal? Yes. Counselor Dominguez? And Mayor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We're going to move on into the evening session. Matt?
Mayor, if I could, please, before you do that, can you please introduce Counselor Trujillo's resolution into the record?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Trujillo is entering a resolution supporting the New Mexico Litter Control and Beautification Act of 1985, which provides public funds in the form of grants for the purpose of enhancing local litter control and beautification programs. Okay, we're going to move on to matters from, or petitions from the floor. I will allow for 2 minutes to be able to address the council.
Mayor, Councilors, David White, 1997, Gaius Terraza. Also, I'm Vice Chair of the Mayor's Committee on Disability. In that respect, I sent out 2 letters last week, which you all received. One, there's been a partial response from the lady doing the new bus stop, and 2, the response from the city manager, as per usual, is non-existent. My question is it practice or policy of the city manager to discriminate? Thank you. I forgot to say one very important thing. I did give 2 copies of those letters to the recorder so they can officially be part of the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Good evening, City Councilors, Mr. Mayor. My name is Jim Williamson. I'm a 4th-generation New Mexican living in Tierra Contenta. I'm here with representing Santa Fe Power Group this evening. I do have some constructive criticism and maybe some new ideas. Issue number 1, I had submitted an IPA request, information, public information request, asking for the city's org chart. And I understand there's a 15-day turnaround time, and if that can't be met, you get additional days, no big deal. But really, shouldn't that kind of be on hand for city management to know, hey, this person is supervised by this person, and you can make your staff work more efficiently. So if you have an org chart available to the public, you could maybe work more efficiently, maybe knock out processes better. Number 2, I also requested an AR aging which is accounts receivable, to find out who owes the city money, right? I mean, that could possibly be used to fund our city workers who can work on our parks, clean up our medians. That is also delayed, but you know, I do accounting by trade. That's something that you just do in the accounting software. It takes about 2 minutes to run. You can see, you know, this person owes me this amount of money for this reason. And the aging report is 30, 60, 90 days out. So how do you guys manage your collections? If you don't have a report, how do you go and collect unpaid water or someone who owes the city money? So there might be revenue out there that you guys can just recollect. Another issue was with the water from last meeting. We did notice on the financial statements that the revenue that the city takes in from ratepayers is 5 times the expenses on water that you guys use, you know, water rights, capital improvements, you know, maintenance. So what's that other 80%? Is that funding other parts of city government or what? I mean, technically you should only draw in what you spend. It should be, you know, nonprofit governmental. You shouldn't be taking 5 times more than you need. And one thing on the weeds and the potholes, the idea on the Twitter account was good, but also could maybe the city canvass the area, city crews, to send a crew out, you know, once every quarter. You know, go down the main drags, write down when there's potholes. That way it's not on the citizens to find these. They're kind of being more proactive. All right? And thank you very much.
Your name for the record. And if you can lower the mic a little bit more, then we can make sure we hear you.
I'm Diane Wood. I'm registered to vote in District 1. And thank you for this opportunity to speak in favor of ranked choice voting. Many other local jurisdictions and election officials have expertise in this area and could assist the city in getting up to speed. This was voted on years ago by the voters and passed. And I want to thank Councilor Maestas for putting it on the agenda and for my own councilor's support of this. And the voters deserve no less. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Maria Perez. I'm the director of Fair Vote New Mexico. I want to thank the mayor and the council for this opportunity. Fair Vote is a nonpartisan organization that works to improve electoral reforms, to get electoral reforms that give voters a greater voice and more choice in our elections, and ranked choice voting is a way that we can get this. I thank Councilor Maestas for asking for this to be put on the agenda next session, and I want to encourage the governing body to support the motion to rescind. As Councilor Maestas has proposed, I feel that the vote to delay implementation that was made last session was brought before action, before it needed to be. The councilors will be able to get full information from the Secretary of State and others, which will only be available through a public hearing. Santa Fe can get this done. We can get this done right and in time for our next election, and thus we can honor the will of the people, the voters of Santa Fe. Thank you so much.
Good morning, Mayor, governing body. My name is Roman Montoya. I live in 3516 Wasatca Court in Albuquerque. I just want to let you know that I myself am a former city clerk and deputy county clerk and deputy city clerk for the city of Albuquerque, city of Rio Rancho, and for Bernalillo County. Most recently, I was working as a deputy for our current Secretary of State, Maggie Toulouse Oliver. I just want to let everybody here know that I work for a subsidiary right now called the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center, and we are a subsidiary of Fair Vote. And our agency is made up strictly of former administrators from around the country who have implemented ranked choice voting. This is something that we really do want to spread some education about. You've probably seen some emails from me and from some people in my group trying to get information out. That's what we do. We really would try to educate people. We have resources available where we can assist in any way possible. I would love to be able to meet with any and all of you at any time to be able to discuss, the implementation. I've implemented voting convenience centers in 2010. I was the one who brought those to the state of New Mexico, how we all vote right now. I did implement that for the first time. I implemented the very first governing body streaming on the web and with an interactive agenda. I did the very first online campaign reporting back in 2001. So I'm familiar with what it is to implement things and to have them be successful. This is something that can be successful in Santa Fe, and you guys will be the light leading the way. We are going to start pushing this in Rio Rancho after this. Doña Ana's already expressed interest, and so has City of Albuquerque. This is something that we want to point to say, look, it can be done. Here's the example. Here's the shining star. And we want Santa Fe to be that first initial city in New Mexico to do this. We have the resources to do that. We come from an administrative background. I come from an administrative background when it comes to clerks, so I can help in any ways possible. I've offered my help to Yolanda. I actually have a request to meet with her next week, Yolanda, I think. So love to be able to do that. Love to give you advice. Love to be able to help any way we can. Thank you so much, and we'll be in touch.
Hi, my name is Marianne Maestas, and I live at 7129 Cayagena. I'm here today as a community member and as a member of Earth Care here in Santa Fe in support of ranked choice voting for our next municipal election. I want to thank you all for holding off on the final vote. And now that we know that it's feasible to implement this new system, the city can honor the residents' will and the voters' will for our next election. I appreciate the desire of the council to ensure its successful implementation, but we know that there's a clear path forward for every one of the concerns raised. It is our responsibility to honor our democratic election process, and this type of voting allows voters like me to express my political voice in a more nuanced way and empowers us to choose among candidates. We need a more empowered democracy and reasons to believe in the electoral process. This type of voting is one important step, and the council's follow through on an overdue delivery is another. We at Earth Care are committed to educating folks, especially in District 3, about these changes. Thank you.
Stephanie Benenato. Two things. I think the city has a long way to go in order to get voter support or voter confidence in the way the city is operating, given the latest scandal at the Chavez Center. So again, gas taxes, sugar taxes, any kind of money given to the city is a little scary when, again, we had a parks bond that was a problem, yet across the board in the Parks Department, Parks and Recreation Department, financial processes were not looked at, and now again we're playing sort of catch up here in terms of proper procedure. I also want to speak in support of ranked choice voting. I am happy that you're going to consider rescinding your vote. I do believe that if we can get ready for a sugar tax vote and educate people about that a proposition to have ranked choice voting that's been known for 10 years, that there should be some kind of educational material already out there that can be that can be used, so that the whole idea that somehow voters really won't understand the system or be ready for it, I just don't think that's true. I don't think it's true whether you're an English speaker or a Spanish speaker, because I have heard comment about, especially Spanish speaking voters. I think the concept, although the way it's calculated might be complex, I think the idea is actually fairly simple. So I would encourage support of ranked choice voting for 2018. Thank you.
Hello, Mayor and Councilors. My name is Tomas Rivera. I am with an organization called Chainbreaker Collective, As you know, Chainbreaker is a membership-led economic and environmental justice organization. We have over 600 dues-paying members in the city. And we also want to encourage you to support ranked choice voting. We appreciate the proposal to rescind the last vote. Chainbreaker is in the midst of an education campaign over the summer about equity issues and some of the disparities that we're facing across the city. And ranked choice voting is one of the ways that we can actually bring equity into our city. It's one of the very concrete ways that we can bridge some of the divides that we're facing. A lot of our members and the folks in our community feel disempowered from the voting process and feel marginalized by it. Ranked choice voting is one way that people can engage in the process and bring real democracy to our communities. After the end of this summer, this education campaign, we will also be conducting a voter education and registration drive in all the districts across the city, but particularly in our home districts around the Hopewell Men neighborhood, which is in District 2, and all over District 3. So we're committed to doing that education, and we certainly hope that ranked choice voting will be part of that education process. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm John Otter. I have a little more information about the importance of ranked choice voting in increasing equity. We have an urgent need really in Santa Fe to increase our equity, and ranked choice voting has proven to increase political representation of racial minorities. It was used in some New York, Cleveland, Cincinnati back in the 1930s, but it was voted out because it had a positive effect on representation of racial and ethnic minorities. San Francisco has used ranked choice voting since 2004. Its population is about 32% Asian American, 7 African American, and 14 Latino, and 44% white. The number of racial minorities elected to the 11-member San Francisco Board of Supervisors has increased from 4 to 9 using ranked choice voting, 5 Asian Americans, 4 African Americans, and 2 Latinos. In 2014, people of color held 16 of San Francisco's 18 offices elected by ranked choice voting, up from only 9 before 2004. In 2015, 3 of the 4 mayors of the Bay Area cities using ranked choice voting were female. Women held half or more of the offices elected by ranked choice voting in Oakland, Berkeley, and San Leandro. Women and people of color held 47 of the 52 elected offices filled with ranked choice voting. In San Francisco, an overwhelming majority of voters of all races and ethnicities reported understanding ranked choice voting, including 89.8% of Hispanic Latino voters. 50% more racial and ethnic minorities voted to use all 3 preferences allowed in San Francisco. Voters.
Thank you, sir. I think the time is up. You can provide a copy of your statement and also be prepared to testify when we have the public hearing at the next meeting.
Very well.
Thank you.
I'm Karen Heldmeyer, 325 East Berger. I'm wearing 2 hats tonight, and so I don't want you to get confused about which hat I'm wearing when I'm saying what. Hat 1 is I'm representing Marcy Litzenberg, who is First Vice President of the League of Women Voters. You have a letter on your desk from her that, despite what you may have been told by people, neither the local nor the state league has any position on ranked choice voting, and therefore can't oppose it, can't support it, can't even tell you how to do it. They don't have a position because the league doesn't take positions unless it does sufficient study. In other parts of the country, there are leagues that have supported ranked choice voting, have opposed ranked choice voting, have said it only should be done under certain circumstances. But the local and state leagues are not saying any of those things because we haven't done the study. Okay, under my own hat, which is actually not a hat because I never wear hats, but you all got a letter from me, an email a while ago talking about the history of ranked choice voting and how the charter ended up sounding the way it does. And so under my own hat, when you consider ranked choice voting, you have to do it right. You can't screw it up, because if you screw it up, what happens is that people get disenfranchised. And I worry as much about that as I worry about some of the things that people who support ranked choice voting do. I think it's also important that you realize that voting is one of maybe the most basic functions of government. And it should be handled by government. I hear people making nice promises about resources that might be available from nonprofits, whether they're financial or educational. This has to be done by government, because many nonprofits have motives of their own, good, bad, indifferent. I'm not saying, but if you're going to have ranked choice voting, it has to be a governmental function, not a function of NGOs, not a function of well-meaning people, but a function of government. And as such, it's got to work right, and it's got to be done in a reasonable way, or the government, you guys, are going to take the heat. So when you consider rescission at the next meeting, consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, would anyone else like to address the council regarding any matters that are not listed on the agenda tonight? Okay, then this portion of the public comment session is closed. We're going to move on to item H, public hearings. Item 1, request from BTR Wine, 201 Galisteo Street for a wine wholesaler license to be located at BTR Wine, 201 Galisteo Street. This is a public hearing. Would anyone like to address the council regarding this matter? Please come forward.
I do. Stephanie Benenato. I'm only going to say this once and again, and probably will say it at every meeting that you have, but it seems to me again that you have six items tonight having to do with liquor licenses, transfers, waivers, etc. I understand that state law requires you to vote on transfers, but on the waivers, particularly since you almost always grant them, I don't even ever remember, well, I think once there was this business that kept getting waivers, and you finally said, why don't you get a license? But that was a rare occasion. So again, it would be nice if there was some way to administratively handle waivers so that you don't have to waste your time doing these waivers that again are pretty automatic. And I also would encourage Councilor Dominguez to really go forward with the idea that you would have this overlay of liquor, alcohol use, however you're looking at that map that you have mentioned that's in the beginning stages. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the council? Okay, the public hearing has closed. Any questions from the council? If not, what's the pleasure? Roll call.
Councillor Ives?
Yes.
Councillor Maestas?
Yes.
Councillor Rivera?
Yes.
Councillor Villarreal?
Yes.
Councillor Dominguez? Councillor Harris? And Mayor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion is approved.
So just, I don't know if I need to state this, but Councilor Lindell is excused for the evening session.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 2, request from La Chosa, 905 Alareed Street for a transfer of ownership and change of location of dispenser liquor license number 28041 with on-premise consumption only. The license will remain at La Chosa at 905 Alareed Street. This is a public hearing. Would anyone like to address the council regarding this matter? Seeing none, the public hearing has closed. Any questions from the council, or what's the pleasure?
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call.
Yes. Councillor Maestas?
Yes.
Councillor Rivera?
Yes.
Councillor Villarreal?
Yes.
Councillor Dominguez? Councillor Harris? Councillor Ives?
Yes.
And Mayor Gonzalez.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion is approved.
Moving on to item 3, request from T-Bird Southwest Restaurant, 1250 Prospect Street, Suite 305, La Jolla, California, for a transfer of ownership of liquor license number 2776 with on-premise consumption only from Outback Steakhouse of Florida to T-Bird Southwest Restaurant Group. The license will remain at Outback Steakhouse, number 5113, 2574 Camino Entrada. This is a public hearing. Would anyone like to address the council regarding this matter? Seeing none, the public hearing has closed. Questions of the council, or what is the pleasure? Roll call.
Yes, Councilor Rivera.
Yes.
Councilor Villarreal.
Yes.
Councilor Dominguez. Yes. Councilor Harris. Councilor Ives.
Yes.
Councilor Maestas.
Yes.
And Mayor Gonzalez.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion is approved.
Item 4, request from the GLA Santa Fe Hospitality, 3201 C Zaffarano Drive, number 356, for a transfer of ownership of interlocal dispenser liquor license number 28022 with on-premise consumption only and patio service from Abiquiu St. Fleur to GLA Santa Fe Hospitality. This license will remain at the Radish and Rye, 548 Agua Fria Street. So public hearing, would anyone like to address the council regarding this matter? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. What's the pleasure of the council?
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call.
Yes, Councilor Villarreal.
Yes.
Councilor Dominguez. Yes. Councilor Harris. Yes. Councilor Ives.
Yes.
Councilor Maestas.
Yes.
Councilor Rivera.
Yes.
Mayor Gonzalez.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion is approved.
Item number 5, request from the Shed, 113.5 East Palace Avenue, for a transfer of ownership of liquor license number 2767 with on-premise consumption only from the Shed. This license will remain at the Shed at 113.5 East Palace Avenue. This is a public hearing. Would anyone like to address the council regarding this matter? Seeing none, this public hearing has closed. What's the pleasure of the council?
Move to approve. Second.
Roll call.
Yes, Councilor Dominguez. Yes. Councilor Harris. Yes. Councilor Ives.
Yes.
Councilor Maestas.
Yes.
Councilor Rivera.
Yes.
Councilor Villarreal. Yes. Mayor Gonzalez.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Item 6, request from the Spanish Colonial Arts Society for a waiver of the 300-foot location restriction and approval to allow the dispensing consumption of wine at El Museo Cultural, 555 Camino de la Familia, which is within 300 feet of Warehouse 21, 1614 Paseo de Peralta, where services are held by Hope Unlimited Church, Santa Fe. The request is for the Spanish Market Preview event on Friday, July 28, 2017, with alcohol service from 6 to 9 p.m. This is a public hearing. Would anyone like to address the council regarding this matter? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. What's the pleasure of the council?
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call. Councilor Harris. Yes. Councilor Ives.
Yes.
Councilor Maestas.
Yes.
Councilor Rivera.
Yes.
Councilor Villarreal. Yes. Councilor Dominguez. Yes. Mayor Gonzalez.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion is approved.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for being with us.